Welcome to RT.com. I'm Chris Sweeney, and today I'm joined by Gary Heseltine, the Vice President of the International Coalition of Extraterrestrial Research. They're a body of scientists, researchers, academics across 27 countries. They're quite newly formed, and their mission statement is preparing for contact. So we wanted to reach out to Gary, find out about the organisation, and get some information. So thank you for joining me today, Gary.
You're welcome.
So tell me about the organisation, newly formed, but there's a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge behind it. You're not new to this world as people, but it's a new organisation.
Oh yes, no, the organisation has been in reality 3 years in the making, and collectively we have some of the very best people in the world in terms of UFO, UAP research. People like Don Schmidt, who's the leading world's expert on the Roswell case from 1947. Roberto Panotti, a former military officer in Italy and over 50 years experience. People like Susan Hansen for New Zealand, our national representative, with over 40 years of experience, the leading researcher. So we've got some very eminent people. We've got the guy who runs what's called the Hestalen project in Norway, Erling Strand, which is a valley known for a series of strange lights. So we've got some pretty eminent people. We've also got scientists, a bit like Lakazar Filipov from Bulgaria, who is a space astrophysicist, works at the Bulgarian Academy of Science, and he trained Bulgaria's first astronaut. So that's the kind of measure of some of the backgrounds of the people that we have. But as I said, we're 3 years in the making, and over the last 11 months is when we've particularly got together via the Zoom environment during the lockdown, which meant that people started talking to each other much more than they did via online platforms. And basically, we're now 27 countries across 5 continents, and we have gone public on the 25th of May 2021 strategically to place ourselves ahead of the US Navy Task Force report, the Director of National Intelligence report, due out supposedly on the 25th of June. So it's all very strategic, and we're in phase 1, which is our launch and establishing ourselves in the media. And that's basically what we're doing now. We're in our launch phase. What makes ISA very different is it's a global approach. We're 27 countries. All of us have had to sign an oath to become national representatives or deputy national representatives of ISA. And that oath basically says that after 70 years of worldwide research, that we think that the game is up, as it were. We think that the evidence points to something that's real. The phenomenon is real, it acts with intelligence, and that it's likely to be extraterrestrial or non-human in intelligence. And what I mean by non-human, that's a wide area that allows for things like interdimensional, multiverse, that kind of thing, which is all supposedly now possible through quantum physics, which is way beyond me. But that's what the scientists are telling us, that there are other dimensions, that it's basically not man-made, and that's how. And ISA comes into this to do 2 things. One, we're saying, well, actually, we should be looking at this subject now from the what if it's real angle. Yeah, because we know it's real based on the evidence, but the vast majority of the public, in terms of and the media, are totally clueless about the real evidential history of this subject, because they've been led to believe for over 70 years that there is nothing to it. So there's a big psychological issue going on at the moment. Much rubbish out there on the internet. And my remit and ISA's remit is what would stand up basically in a court of law, in a hypothetical court of law, because we believe it's real. The evidence says that it's real. Luis Elizondo says that it's real, that objects are flying around at 13,000 miles an hour, pulling 600 to 700 Gs, that have no wings, no tail surfaces, no propulsion systems, no obvious method of lift. etc., etc. So we are dealing with something that's now gone beyond lights in the sky. Is it Venus? Is it an optical illusion? The performance is simply things that we can't do. And if you've ever seen Luis Elizondo talk about the 5 observables, 5 traits of UFOs, well, I do them in a different way, and I've been doing it for a lot longer. There's at least 8, and he knows that there are more, but he just talks about 5. But I'll do this, and I'll do it with a bit of sound, not to be dramatic, but it does make the point. This is what you're dealing with genuine UAP phenomena. Instant acceleration, instant stop. There's no build-up. It's gone, stop. Yes, it's a jump. Then you've this instant reversal on the same track. No deceleration when you go forward to back. Imagine the G-forces of us trying to do that, of going forward and then flashing to reverse. And then you've got this right angle turns, 90-degree turns, no deceleration at the point of the turn. So again, the G-forces are just unbelievable. And then you've got this. They often evade aircraft by going this. Straight up, no acceleration, just straight from A to B, stop. Jump 10,000 feet in under a second, just like that. And then by the same token, and if you go back to the Nimitz incident, Kevin Day, who was one of the top radar people on the USS Princeton, he said he was monitoring objects that were doing this. Straight down, stopping 50 feet above the water, coming down from 80,000 feet to 50 feet above the water in 0.8 of 1 second. Wow. And then just stop it. So the G-forces to the stop. Incredible. And then what they do is this. You're visible 1 second, you're invisible. You're invisible, you're visible. Major thing that we can't do, and that's not stealth. And then what they also is another characteristic is that even at gigantic size and close proximity to witnesses, there's usually no noise whatsoever. For example, I have a database of police officer sightings in the UK, and several years ago, a police officer contacted me and said, we saw this huge black triangle object, and it was the size of 3 football fields, and it was just above our heads, and there was no noise. And I threw the question back to him and said, well, how do you know it was the size of 3 football fields? He says, well, that's easy. We were parked next to 3 football fields and it blocked it out. So that was a great reference of size. Yeah, a great validation of size. So usually there's no noise. Sometimes there's a low hum. There are other observers. Unlike 1938 and the Orson Welles famous War of the Worlds broadcast, we aren't going to run off to the hills. We aren't going to flee the cities, etc. We're still going to go to work. We're still going to have jobs. But there will be an implication psychologically for mankind to get their head around. And some people will have a difficult time from 2 points of view. Some of them will think that, my God, we're going to be invaded, kind of Independence Day. And technically, this is one of the reasons why America doesn't want, the American government are highly unlikely to admit that we are dealing with an explicit extraterrestrial non-human intelligence, because if they do that, then they are rendering the world superpower, America, totally defenseless and not a superpower at all, in that the objects can go into American airspace with impunity. But that is, by the way, exactly what Luis Elizondo, who ran the secret Pentagon program, is saying. That's what Chris Mellon is saying, who was involved in that, is saying. So that is the scenario.
When you talk about the UFOs, I think all of us, we start imagining the movies we've seen, Independence Day and all this stuff. And are you saying that there's another, I mean, are we talking about aliens? Who's flying these crafts? I mean, do you think there's as ICE are saying that there's another type of body or alien flying these crafts? Or, I mean, excuse my ignorance, but I think a lot of people at home and watching this will want to know this stuff. Are we talking about little green men? I know that's probably a stereotype, but what sort of stuff are we talking about? Yeah.
No. When we're saying that there is that ICE believes that it's extraterrestrial or non-human, we're doing that to allow 2 possibilities, because it may well be a combination of both. We believe that the evidence over the last 70 years says that we're being engaged, if that's the word, engaged. The human race is being engaged probably by many different species, races, whatever you want to call them, of extraterrestrial civilization. It's not going to be one. We think it will be several. It could be a combination that it's from an alternate universe. We don't know, but we're dealing with something. But if you look at the contact experience, the abduction phenomena, as it's referred to in the media, then that is real. It's uncomfortable to say it's real, but that is real. At the moment, it seems benign. It's been around for a long time. It may well have been around for thousands of years. It may well partly live here in our deepest ocean sea trenches, which is what I've been talking about in the media. If we go to the moon, what are we going to do? Set up a moon base. If we go to Mars, what would we set up? A Mars base. Well, wouldn't it make sense that if someone had traveled from a long distance to get to the Earth, that they would think, this is a nice planet. Let's go to somewhere where we can't get seen, can't be observed. Let's go to our deepest ocean trenches, set up a base there, a halfway house, as it were. And UFOs have been seen historically coming in and out of bodies of water for decades. So that makes sense. And we actually only know only 5% of our ocean trenches, of our ocean, full stop. We know more about the surface of the moon and Mars than we do about our deepest ocean trenches. So that would, to me, make a logical reason as to why UFOs are seen coming in and out of bodies of water, that they've got some kind of basis here. So that's one possibility. So again, that then raises the issue, and again, which I've been doing a lot of media about, is the nuclear connection. UFOs, UAP, are often seen in nuclear facilities, power plants, weapon storage areas, nuclear powered ships, submarines, etc., like that. And that says to me that they are saying to us, you're messing with fire. Nuclear weapons are dangerous. Now, that could be, that's just an interpretation, but it's that historical correlation goes back 60 years, 70 years, right back to the late 1940s, when UFOs started showing up in numbers. And what a coincidence is that it's after we detonate the atomic bomb. And that's when we start to see a big increase in numbers. So I think that when we detonated our first atomic weapons, it sent a shockwave out into space, an invisible shockwave that was picked up by other civilizations, who then realized that this creature on this planet had reached a level of technical achievement that it was able to split the atom and create nuclear fusion. So that's when they start turning up. And the Roswell incident in 1947, and Roswell at that time was a very tiny little place, military base in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. Why Roswell? Well, there's one good very reason why it's Roswell. It was the world's first atomic bomb squadron, the only place on the entire Earth with a squadron of planes that could carry atomic weapons. So if you put it in that context, it's one hell of a guess that they just happened to turn up at Roswell, the only place in the world where you've got an atomic bomb squadron. Then it makes kind of perfect sense. Examination. Well, if that scenario happened, which is likely to have happened with Roswell, then what you're going to do, if it was all broken to pieces, you would probably go to different major engineering corporations and give them a piece of it and say, try to make that work. This is all top secret. You can't talk. And I'm not telling you anyone else is involved. And you do that to all the world's top American engineering and design companies, and they all work at it in secret, not knowing the big picture. And then some of them go, yeah, I managed to get that working. Well, things like fiber optics that are supposedly reverse engineered from the likes of Roswell. The people talk about the armor plating that you get now is coming from the likes of Roswell, that kind of thing. And now we're talking about, and it's only recently been talked about, what's called metamaterials. Metamaterials is a new term that scientists are using to say that alloys, in a sense, man-made alloys, can be put together in a certain layering that produces different effects. Now, we think that crashes have produced metal of some kind, that when it's been examined under electron microscopes, that it's done in alloy form, in layers and layers of things that are of elements put together in ways that we haven't been able to do before. And there is speculation. Jacques Vallée, the famous French researcher, is supposedly working on several pieces of metamaterials that's been recovered from crashes over the years. And I think that there's going to be more details of that released in due course. But this would tend to suggest that whatever these things are built in ways that we've not thought about, because they're advancing us in terms of the level of technology. But this has huge implications, which is another reason why there needs to be a wider debate, because we think of all the negatives perhaps of the Independence Day scenario of being attacked, etc. However, in reality, there's a lot of positives. What if they said we had a cure for cancer? What if we said that, you know, we don't have to use fossil fuels anymore? There you go. There's an anti-gravity machine there. This would make cars and jet engines and fuel and fossil fuels redundant. Now that would be a positive, and it would help the climate and the planet. So there are issues that are positive from a level of contact. Now the question is, has there been any official contact prior to this? Well, in the public domain, we can't prove any. There are people who say that there have been, but we can't prove that in the public domain. And I always say to people, we only know 10% of this subject in the public domain. 90% of the subject remains hidden in the classified world of need to know, military intelligence, and special government projects.
In terms of ICER's mission statement, we started with that, and, you know, we called that, you know, it's preparing for contact. Preparing for contact. Now, do you envisage, if I take the movie, and I'm sorry to use these crude examples, but I think movies are an easy way we can all grasp things. We take something like Men in Black, where, you know, aliens live amongst humans, and, you know, sometimes they're shaped as humans, and there's like an alien inside and all that stuff. Now, of course, I don't expect that to happen, and I don't think you're suggesting that at all. But do you feel as though we'll be living alongside other civilizations? Do you feel as though when you say contact, do you think we'll be having a relationship, sharing the planet, being in each other's lives? Is that how you see this thing developing?
I think that's too big a leap. What we're saying is preparing for contact is preparing for the acceptance that we are dealing with an extraterrestrial non-human engagement. That level of this is real, it is intelligent, and that there is an engagement with planet Earth. That's what the type of contact we're talking about, not the type of contact that you're talking about, which is, I guess, and I understand where you're coming from, is further down the line. Because obviously, if you then think, well, they're coming here, the natural question is, well, has there been communication? And that's when you then go into that contact abduction experience, which would say that for over 70 years, there has been a level of contact going on. And again, the issue of nuclear weapons comes up time and time again in the contact experience, where people are being told telepathically that your planet is in danger, etc., etc., etc. So that if you accept that premise that the contact experience is real, which we do, but you know, we think that's too big a leap straight away. To avoid a brick wall, you just have to acclimatize and talk about the best evidential history. So take the threat element away and just get people to acclimatize to that. And then you can start saying, well, actually, there is other things going on, like the contact experience. Yes, it is real, and it would appear to indicate that many different species are coming to this planet. And if you think about it, if we are space tourists, what do? We send probes out into the solar system, beyond the solar system now with the Voyager, etc. We're only doing what they've done, but they've done it quicker because they're millions of years ahead of us or whatever. They've got new methods of propulsion systems. So people ask me hypothetical questions like, well, why do they come here? And I said, well, I don't know why they come here, but I suspect, my little pet theory is that this planet in this part of the cosmic neighborhood is a bit like an oasis in the desert, because it's so full of water, rich in diverse life and fauna, I think we're a bit like the Great Barrier Reef. We go to places that are interesting. So if you were a space tourist, why wouldn't you come to planet Earth and just observe the minions? Because we're cloaked, we don't have to, we don't have to show ourselves, and that's why they can do this and do that. Visible the second, invisible the next. So I suspect that that's probably the reason, is that in our bit of the cosmic neighborhood, we're a very interesting planet because of the amount of water, the atmosphere, the diverse, life and fauna, animals, insects, etc. I think we're just a little oasis in the desert. And that's why they come. If we go to the Galapagos Islands because it's got unique species. Well, if you were a space tourist, wouldn't you come and do the same here? But do we talk to the insects? No, we don't, because we don't think they can understand us. Well, maybe we've not attained a level of intellectual ability yet that they think we should talk to you yet. It's going back to the ants in the playground, and we don't talk to the ants. Maybe we're the ants in the playground. I suspect it's probably like that. But has there been contact? I suspect there probably has, but we can't prove it in the public domain.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of going forward, I mean, generations, like you say, for the 1940s and nuclear weapons, we'll start to see a lot more of these things. When do you anticipate this will become a sort of an accepted thing? Do I sort of have a plan that you hope within the next 15, 20 years, or do you think it'll be, grandkids, generations ahead before we accept this? Because it's going to be a lot for people to get their head around. And obviously, you mentioned social media. Lots of people on social media put out a lot of unsubstantiated rubbish, which obviously detracts from the academic thing. So, do you think this will be maybe a generational thing before people really accept it?
It depends. It depends very much on the government. The US government hold the key a lot to this. But it would be nice if the likes of China and Russia suddenly started to become more transparent as well. There is an opportunity here to say, well, okay, from 6 months or a year's time, we're going to be transparent, and we're going to go through this as a one world basis because it's a worldwide phenomenon. ISA wants to take this issue globally to the highest levels of government and eventually to the United Nations. Now, you can't just get to the United Nations. As an international NGO, you've got to build up a body of work that's recognized by the UN so that you can be given what's called special consultative status. And then other countries can then ask questions on your behalf in the UN. However, that could all very quickly disappear if, as a recent story speculated, that China was going to address the UN about the UFO UAP issue. Well, if they did that, then that could be a real game changer, because straight away you're in a forum where other countries were going to be forced to listen to this debate. The last debate has not happened since 1978 with the Grenada initiative with Sir Eric Gairy, and that was given very limited time for discussion. But if a major power like China addresses the United Nations in the next few months, wow, that could open lots of doors. So it's very much dependent on some of the larger countries, I think. But I think that the way the momentum is going, I think that within 5 to 10 years, you'll have degree courses in ufology or UAPology, whatever it's called. But it will be in the mainstream, because this is going now in a mainstream transition. We're trying to get rid of the stigma that's plagued this subject for over 70 years and dogged it, because people have committed suicide because of the ridicule. Historically, people have lost their jobs, been grounded as pilots just for saying I saw something and go in public. So there's been very powerful reasons for people not to come forward. And this stigma that's been attached has been worked incredibly well for the authorities to stop people coming forward and create this illusion that there's nothing to it. Well, if all that is now being lifted, as it appears to be, and we're having serious news discussions about it, then that can only lead to one thing: greater awareness, greater public scrutiny, greater amount of people that will come forward. It could change very quickly. I always liken it to a dam, and that in December of 2017, those 3 videos came out and they removed a few bricks from the dam. So the water pressure is building on a weak point. And then I think that this Director of National Intelligence Navy Task Force report, will be a few more bricks at that weak point coming out. So the pressure is building on that weak spot in the center of the dam. And that dam will eventually just shatter and break and cascade and quickly collapse. So we're getting close to that stage. We're not there yet, but I think in 6 months or a year's time, if the momentum keeps building the way it is, and we get more and more scientific data released, which we're hoping the government will be more transparent, the military will be transparent, then the dam will quickly break. And that's when you're into what we call disclosure with a big D. You'll know when disclosure with a big D happens is because it'll be 24/7 on every news channel, of the world, like COVID. Yeah, COVID everywhere. That's when you'll know that you're into big disclosure with a big D, when everybody